Hey everyone, it's very cold in this room, which is why I'm wearing a different hat than usual, but also I'm recording this like 12 hours after after the Patriots laid the smack down on the Jets last night. So what better way to celebrate? Also, in recent hours, recent days, recently, uh, the director of the Godfather films, Francis Ford Coppola himself, joined in on the conversation about Marvel films and went so far as to not just say that they're bad or that they're not cinema, but that they're despicable. Like their existence is somehow evil. And I I want to do a separate video about whether or not Marvel is really killing the film industry, but that's not really the topic of discussion today. What is that I've seen people say that Martin and Francis feel this way because they're jealous. And, immediately there's people that are like, well, why would they be jealous? They're two of the most highly regarded directors of all time. But I think there's a little bit of merit to that, actually. And it's not so clear cut as, oh, they wish that their movies made $1 billion every couple of months. It's not that simple. Although I do think that is a part of it. Um, because overall, the climate of film has changed, right? Still the highest grossing film of all time is Gone with the Wind. But I mean, there was a time when Titanic, I think, was the only movie that ever grossed $1 billion. And there's a lot of I don't want to say clout because I hate that word, but there's a lot of like regard and reverence that comes with an accomplishment like that. But as I said, the climate of film has changed, and now these huge companies like Warner, Sony, Disney are able to just take these no-name directors, give them a budget, and then they can just crank out a movie that makes $1 billion. You know, once upon a time, if you wanted to be considered, a great filmmaker, you had to make great films, and that's still sort of true. But it's like with Scorsese, he had to do King of Comedy and Taxi Driver, and I was almost gonna say Goodfellas. I don't know if he did Goodfellas. Good God, but Coppola had to do The Godfather. He had to do these groundbreaking, innovative genre shake-up type of films in order to get that title. Now, Anthony and Joe Russo are considered great filmmakers just because they told a really good Captain America story that one time. Same with James Gunn because, the Guardians of the Galaxy movies make you laugh. And, maybe they're upset that now all these new kids get to sit at the grown-up table, They've spent so much time as icons in the film industry. I mean, I look up to them. Like, I am taking great inspiration from one of their films on a movie that I'm actually working on right now. But still, like, relax. But as I was saying, they spent so much time in this upper echelon of legend when it comes to filmmaking. And now here's these new kids, Ryan Coogler, John Watts, whoever directed Captain Marvel, Anthony and Joe Russo, Joss Whedon, Shane Black. Just because all their movies made $1 billion and got a whole bunch of attention, some of them got Oscar noms, they get to just kick down the door and demand seats at the same table, And a lot of that just has to do with the serialization of the MCU, which again is a sign of how filmmaking has changed. That something was in my mouth. Okay, that wasn't something that you could have gotten away with back then. And the only reason that it worked with the MCU is because it was based on something that was very popular and was building towards a climax that promised to be satisfying and interesting and huge and dynamic. So, of course, the longer you stretch that out, the more hype you can build up. But with that, there's a lot more responsibility and a lot more work. The MCU didn't just happen by accident, It still took a lot of effort. And I'll admit that for someone that has no knowledge of the comics or the characters or what sets them apart, what makes them interesting, on the surface, they would all appear to be relatively the same movie. But I think it's unfair to say that Marvel movies are the only movies that are a problem because, there is still DC and there was the Fox X-Men verse and all sorts of stuff, whatever. Point is, actually, There was something more that I wanted to get into with that. Um, I can't remember. I'll probably save it for later then. But yeah, Francis and Martin sound like those two grumpy old heckler Muppet characters because, it's just like they're just not relevant anymore. I mean, who doesn't think The Godfather is one of the greatest films of all time? Same with Taxi Driver. I mean, Taxi Driver is so good that Todd Phillips tried to make his very own, and it's called Joker. It's not going to be the last time I insult that movie. But, here's the big but. To do it in such a way that, I mean, the modern audience as it exists today loves that stuff. They love Marvel, they love Star Wars, they love Disney, they love Pixar, all sorts of stuff. And yeah, on the surface it looks childish, it looks undiverse, it all looks bland and generic. The only thing that sets these movies apart is the characters. Because I'll admit, yeah, a lot of it is still very formulaic, but it comes down to the writing of the characters. And the characters are how you get taken on these emotional journeys. Coppola and Scorsese seem to think that, as I said before, that because there's a cape, that because there's a costume, that because there's superpowers in the film, it's inherently impossible to learn or gain or experience anything when you're watching the movie. And that's very unfortunate for them to think that, because honestly, I've been moved emotionally in a lot of superhero movies. Like Black Widow's death still really makes me tear up. And it's really rough on me because all she wanted was her family back and she had to die to get that. Point is, just because the movie says Marvel Studios on the poster doesn't mean that it's inherently incapable of nuance and that you can't hope to, learn or feel something when you're watching the movie. It's just very silly. It's like, if The Irishman is out already, I don't know. But when The Irishman hits Netflix, just because it's a Martin Scorsese film, you're supposed to just think it's going to be amazing, and it just thereby is? No. You don't just get that. Francis Ford Coppola, The Godfather 3. Come on. As I was saying, though. Actually, no, that's about it. I just think it's a little silly for these two to come down off of their high horses and just insult the entirety of the MCU. I mean, this is not even going to be the same after Endgame. Nobody's really going to care that much. And again, it's not ruining the film industry. It's not keeping other movies from making money. So I don't really understand what the complaint there is. But, that's it for this one. I'll see you very soon.